You are listening to or watching the Filmcast. Welcome to our review of The Banshees of Inisherin. Written and directed by Martin McDonagh, I'm going to read the plot summary from IMDb. Two lifelong friends find themselves at an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship with alarming consequences for both of them, end quote. Devindra, I remember when we started this podcast, when it was called the Slash Filmcast and previously the Watchers, one of the movies that came out around that time was In Bruges.
In Bruges, yeah.
Which, great film, in my opinion. Really, really great.
Yeah, great movie.
And obviously McDonagh has had a really illustrious career since then, but I am really curious,
he hasn't really made many movies since then. He did Seven Psychopaths and he did Three Billboards,
Yes. But,
not really that
both
much,
of those critically acclaimed, Academy Award winning and so on. But and he's also done plays in that time as well. So
he is first and foremost a playwright. Yeah.
I was very excited about this movie, had heard great things, and it seems to be up my alley in terms of the subject matter. And so I'm really curious, Devindra, let's hear your thoughts on Banshees of Inisherin. What did you think of this movie?
Oh, I thought this movie was hilarious, and in ways I didn't really expect to, because ultimately this is a movie about the end of a friendship. It's a friendship breakup, set in a sort of like dreary and cold, island off of Ireland. So the setting and the characters around it doesn't make you think like you're going to be watching a rollicking comedy. But I found this movie just genuinely hilarious. I saw it with my brother last night, and we were we were only some of the few people in the theater, but we were having a ball because of the absurdity, first of all, of the situation, of the setup of like, oh, he just doesn't want to talk to you anymore, and the slow realization that it was because you're just kind of dull. And the comedy that ensues from that, I think, is genuinely good. This is a very focused movie in a way that I appreciated, because I liked a lot about Three Billboards. I think it may be overreached at certain points, which, hey, there's a lot you could talk about in that movie. This one is a lot more focused on just like a friendship and how people relate to each other. And, you've got a civil war kind of happening in the background, which could sort of mirror what's happening in the movie. But generally, I found this movie just to be a great time of, just watching it is like the ultimate breakup, and it's like somebody who doesn't understand like why either a relationship fell apart or why a friendship fell apart, and somebody else just having more of an awakening maybe of the world and of the time that they spend, and the making their time more valuable, and maybe just going about that in a really shitty way. I think there's a lot going on in this movie. I genuinely loved it. I thought it was going to be kind of a slog, to be honest, especially because it's close to 2 hours long. And I could have sat there for 3 hours. I could have had much more of these characters, this community, the vibe of this movie too, because it's very much putting you in that place of being in these like just like very cold houses. I just felt cold, watching this movie, because they're in stone houses. Some of the houses have like, straw roofs. Like it's very much like how people were living a long time ago there, like no real modern amenities, but there's a sweetness to this movie too, even when things get really, really crazy at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved it. Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad you liked it. I remember you were like a little bit, I think when I first had floated this as a main movie idea, I don't know that you were so hot on it back then, but I'm glad you really liked it now.
Yeah.
I will say one of the things I really like about the movie is, so first of all, Inisherin is a fictional island, we should say. But what I think this movie does a really good job of is showing you what that community, environment, atmosphere is like. I live in Seattle, and there are multiple islands off of the coast of Seattle, I guess, in the Puget Sound. So there's like Bainbridge Island and Vashon Island, and you need to take a 30 to 45-minute ferry to get from those islands to the city.
I love the Bainbridge Ferry. Yeah,
it's beautiful. But there's people who like live on these islands, and they choose to commute like 45, 60, 90 minutes to get to work every day. And I'm always like, why would you do that? That seems extremely stressful, to have to do that.
Lovely community here.
Yeah. But it's like a whole different world, basically. It's a whole like everyone knows each other, and
island people in general, like small island folks. We could go back to Midnight Mass. I remember visiting small islands around New England. Kind of the same deal of like locals are a very specific vibe. And it's like going into a new universe whenever you enter these places. Yeah.
I should point out, obviously, like these islands that I've referred to are much more populous and more technologically advanced than Inisherin. And this movie takes place in 1923. So it's like a very different than that. But I'm always just like curious, like you know, like on a lark, I have
Mhm.
wondered, like maybe like I should investigate living
Yeah,
on
you should
islands,
investigate.
see what that's
Sometimes
like,
you
you know?
just want to get away from people.
Yeah,
Maybe we've got too many people, but this
yeah.
movie has seen like it's just
But
scenes of
this movie
like
does show the disadvantages of that as well, I
the
think. You
disadvantages, but also the advantages. I would say like, man, just what if I just get up and just sell some milk and I go to the pub all day.
know?
And the pub has this nice little table overlooking the cliffs and the water. It's like
Mhm.
that's kind of nice.
Yeah,
I'd like to be
yeah.
there for a little while until you realize how freaking cold everything is at all times. Yeah.
Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on the Banshees of Inisherin?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on the Banshees of Inisherin is best summed up in the form of a limerick. I was already loving that script when a policeman gave Colin a fat lip. Dave Chen said it right. This odd friendship fight is true Jeff Kanata catnip.
Yeah. I don't know if
Fat lip.
I don't know if
Wow.
catnip and fat lip rhymes with script, Jeff, but I'll allow it.
Yes,
Sure,
it does,
sure,
Dave.
Sure.
I want to tell you the story of this limerick. About 5 minutes into this movie, you had said, Jeff, I think you're going to love this movie. I think it's Jeff Kanata catnip, as
Yes.
you said to me.
Yes.
About 5 minutes into this movie, I went, oh my God, Dave was right. I love this movie so much. 5 minutes in. Sitting there in the movie theater, I go, I kind of want to use catnip as the rhyme in the limerick, but there's no way. What even rhymes with catnip? Fat lip. But what are the odds that someone in this movie is going to get a fat lip? 5 minutes into the movie, and then about a half an hour in the movie, Colin Farrell gets punched by a cop and is sitting there with a big fat lip, and I was like, it's meant to be. I have to do it. Very strange
Kismet.
experience to me. I literally thinking to myself, not knowing where this movie was going at all. 5 minutes in, he's like, do you want to go have a beer, get into the pub and have a beer with me? And he says no. And I'm like, man, there's no way somebody's getting a fat lip in this movie.
Well, Jeff, I'm really glad you had that evolution and look at the limerick we got from it. Amazing. So,
well,
yeah.
I love this movie. I love this movie. It does feel like a play. I love the language of this movie. I love, it feels almost like a Coen Brothers or David Mamet, where the sort of the idiosyncrasies of the vernacular is a character in the movie, and I love that. I eat that stuff up. And I love how it is the smallest stakes there could ever be turned into the biggest stakes for a movie. It is literally just, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And I as it was unfolding at the beginning, I'm like, oh my God, it'd be so amazing if that's literally the entire movie is about them. And it really, and it was.
It is.
But it is so wonderful how that, I mean, I think I got more deep stuff out of it than it sounds like you did, Devindra, because I do think it's hilarious. I do think
there's
it's
a lot of deep
fun,
stuff going on here.
but it's also like this. First of all, we have a character who is having an existential crisis,
Yes.
and that feels very relatable today as well. Of like, what is even the point of all this? What will live beyond me? Well, I need to I need to do something as somebody who is in his 40s, as I am. Having that midlife crisis of what am I even doing? I loved that aspect of it. And I also think it speaks to our time in a way of how this nice guy who is constantly being referred to as the nice guy can turn into a monster from the smallest thing, from the smallest, this tiny thing that can get under our skin. An insulting tweet can turn you into a complete monster. You can be wrapped up in this notion of not being able to handle the social dynamic that we're seeing writ large in our society because social is not just two people in a pub anymore, not just the 6 people that live on this island. It's global. I think this movie has so much to say about the social framework and the fragility of it and the extremes to which we will go to reckon with it and preserve it and not have it offend us in any deep way.
It's like a metaphor for our relationship with Twitter in many ways too. Like the whole, like, I shouldn't be just sitting here and doom scrolling, for an hour or two every night. I should go out and do something constructive with my life. And I
Yes.
did feel that for sure. Yeah.
I can't imagine why it struck me so personally. This movie about guys sitting around talking regularly, and then one of them's like, "I don't want to talk anymore. I want to do something with my life." I don't understand why I would relate with that so much. It's a weird feeling,
Especially in like, you just realize one of them is just like really dull, or you're the dull one.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're like, oh man, I am literally dragging down everyone around me with my stupidity. Like that is a fun concept.
There's so many wonderful performances. There isn't a moment in this movie that doesn't include either of the two main actors, Colin Farrell or Gleason, that literally made me cry. It is. We'll talk about it in spoilers. It is an exquisite piece of acting, and I mean, I think this movie is an absolute gem. There's nothing else like it. It's beautiful. It's hilarious. There are lines that I could like write and put on my wall, it's like that I just want to remember forever. They're just so perfectly executed. I love this movie. I think this is going to be in my top 10 of the year for sure.
Amazing. Hey, I mean, sounding like a broken record here, but I really like the movie as well. I particularly want to give a shout out to Carrie Condon, who plays Siobhan, Colin Farrell's sister. She is kind of the heart and soul of the film. She's kind of the mediator between these two opposing forces, neither of whom are acting reasonably, in my opinion, right? But she's almost like the audience surrogate of like, oh, through her, we can experience the madness that's going on around us. So I just really thought she brought a lot to this movie.
But also like the madness of island life versus the pull of like going out and literally doing anything else with your life, on the mainland too. Like there's a lot of that.
Yeah. She quits Twitter, right? She's the only one that can quit Twitter.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in spoilers, Jeff. But
yes.
Anyway, all the performances are great, and the things that this movie captures, you guys have already touched upon, and that I've already touched upon, like this idea of island life, what that community is like, how oppressive it can be, how nice it can be, but also, as Jeff put it, like this idea of escalation, it can start with something small and then it can escalate. It's like a road rage. You're screaming at someone who just nudged you a little bit this way. It's something you would never do in real life, but because you're in cars, you feel like it's okay to scream at them. I mean, it's kind of a version of that we see in this movie where, like, in my opinion, it's about, to some degree, like toxic masculinity. It's about loneliness. There is a loneliness epidemic amongst men specifically in this country. And it's a well-documented fact that like men have fewer friends than women do, and have fewer meaningful conversations with their friends. And this movie kind of shows some of the impacts of that. Like what happens when you draw that out to its logical conclusion. So dialogue's great. It's very funny. It takes some interesting turns. And also, it escalates. Even though the stakes are really small, you feel this sense of escalation and inevitability to the proceedings.
I feel really like conflict. It's the idea of conflict, the Civil War happening like off on the mainland and them not fully understanding what's happening there too, I think is a big part of it too. Like they don't know what started that war. I'm not fully up on the history either. But the idea that humans can just outright start killing each other, make things deadly, based on maybe a disagreement or maybe some sort of even a minor conflict, it's like inherent in all of us, and it could start from the smallest seed. One thing I want to point out is like this is also our second sad Colin Farrell movie of the year after Yang, and I love him in this mode specifically because he is both he can be the dashing leading man, but he can also be the sad puppy dog guy.
Those big eyebrows do so much work in this movie.
He is like, shaggy dog at times with those eyebrows. But like there is a moment, just like The Simpsons, like where you can pinpoint when his heart breaks.
Yeah.
And like he sells it with his eyes and his face and how he reacts. But this movie begins in an almost like comical way. Like he is just smiling. He's just walking down the street. There's a rainbow behind him,
Yeah.
like in the bay. It's hilarious. It's like
Yeah.
almost like a children's movie of like how happy and idyllic his little life is at that point, and then to see where everything goes, I think is just fascinating. All it's really all Colin Farrell. Just selling this
You're
so
right
hard.
to point out his performance. I
Mhm.
think it's Oscar nomination worthy. It is a wonderful performance. But everybody in this movie is very, very good.
All good.
It's also worth reflecting on just how far Colin Farrell has come career-wise. I
Mhm.
mean, in the early aughts, he had addiction issues. He had a sex tape, and he was kind of starring in these big budget blockbusters, but that none of them were particularly good. Like remember SWAT? You
Yeah.
know,
Remember SWAT? I
uh,
remember his turn in Daredevil. Yeah.
yes, as
About Total
Bullseye, right?
Recall.
Did you
Yeah,
guys ever
total.
see Alexander?
No, I
I
have
don't know.
not. I have not.
That was the Oliver Stone
Oliver Stone,
Alexander,
yeah,
Right.
the
yeah.
great movie. I saw that in theaters, and he was actually pretty good in it. But that was a weird moment for us, where it's like he could be huge, he could be big, and then he did In Bruges a couple years later, and we're like, oh, actually, this is best.
Yeah, I
This
mean, he
mode is
he
best.
he has taken like really interesting smaller roles. They're not going to be seen by as many people as watch SWAT in theaters,
Mhm.
but they ultimately, I think, are better work. In Bruges, I'm thinking of Killing of a Sacred Deer as well. You know, like
Yeah,
also
yeah,
starring
yeah.
Barry Keoghan, and so I think that. I'm loving this stage of his career. I'm loving the choices he's making. He doesn't
Mhm.
have to make these choices. I'm sure he gets calls all the time to be like, be in the Marvel movie, be in this action movie, whatever. Be the Gray Man, you know, like whatever. But like he's turning that down, and we're all richer for it. So
Absolutely.
anyway, um, why don't we get to spoilers for the Banshees of Inisherin starting right now? One of the things we didn't really mention during our main review is Barry Keoghan's performance in this movie,
Mhm.
which is pretty heartbreaking. He
That
plays
that
Dominic.
moment on the beach is the one that utterly destroyed me when he tries to ask her out,
Uh huh.
and like the way he does it is so vulnerable and so beautiful and so heartbreaking, and how he knows what she's going to say but he says it anyway, and that's, oh my god, that sequence is
Mhm.
incredible.
And also when he calls out Colin Farrell's character for being kind like, I thought you were nice, but it turns out like you're
Yeah.
Yeah.
just as shitty as them. Like he is sort of like the truth teller
Mm.
here. Yeah.
I thought her response to it was very compassionate,
Mhm.
though.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like I thought she was very kind. You know, there was a moment in the movie that I thought was weird. You guys tell me like what you thought.
There are
So
many weird moments, but
I
yeah,
mean, we
yeah.
find out that like Barry Keoghan's character commits suicide in the movie,
Mhm.
right? Or is
Yeah.
my interpretation.
Yeah,
Seems
we
like,
see him
yeah.
in the background on the cliff, and then
Yeah, I was gonna
Mhm.
say. So that was weird to me. That the way I remember it shot is Siobhan is saying goodbye to Colin
Yep.
Farrell, like she's
Yep.
waving goodbye to him, and then in the background of the Colin Farrell shot, we see a figure that we don't know
Mhm.
who it is.
I thought
yeah.
it was the old woman, but okay,
Right.
could
And
easily be
then
Barry Keoghan's character, yeah.
we cut back to Siobhan again, and she's looking at the cliff, and she's very concerned. She
Yeah,
looks like
yeah,
very
yeah.
concerned, and then we don't see what happens.
Yeah.
My interpretation is that was Dominic who then like jumped off the cliff afterwards. But if that's true, it's weird that her letter back to Pat Padraic, or Farrell's character, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, was like really upbeat. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
so that was the cliff, but they pulled him out of the, like, little river pond, the little, like,
Yeah,
lake.
but it almost
So
seemed like she saw him jump. Like,
I think it was
like
more like she was concerned about what he was going to
he
do,
was gonna.
but
Maybe
he
she
didn't
didn't
actually
actually see
jump.
it.
Yeah,
Maybe she didn't actually see it
she
happen.
didn't see it
Yeah,
because he died in the other thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's a weird um moment. It's the
Mhm.
movie is generally like spells out everything that happens in the movie, so it's
Yeah.
weird that that moment is like left up to your imagination.
There's a
But
lot of weird things. Like there is a bit of mysticism here because the old woman is like they basically explain like, what if a banshee is just somebody who's just sitting there watching all this fall apart, and like the old woman is like, yes, step into the lake, or yes, I will sit here and watch this house burn and this friendship fall apart. So they kind of like subtly saying like she is some sort of witch or banshee as well. Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
is that your interpretation of the title? Because my
Some
interpretation,
people are
yeah, yeah.
like that. Like she does it doesn't have to be magical, but some people who revel in the misery of it all. And I feel like even that early conversation, like she seems like that sort of person. Yeah.
Uh, the title comes from a song that Brendan
Yes.
Gleeson's character Colm is writing, and he's like, "I think I'm going to call it the Banshees of Inisherin," right? Because it just sounds like a good name. But my interpretation is like one of my favorite letterbox lists that I ever wrote was, you know, movies whose theme can be summed up by the phrase, but who's the real
Mhm.
title of the
Mhm.
movie? Who is the real Parasite? Who's the real blah, blah, blah. And I,
Jurassic Park.
who are the real Banshees of Inisherin? And I think it's these men. I think it's these men who
Mhm.
are like screaming for companionship and connection
Mhm.
and don't get it.
Mhm.
And it causes them to scream, not outwardly, not explicitly, but like metaphorically. And so anyway, that was how I interpreted the title.
Yeah,
But
I mean, there are multiple things. It's
yeah,
just like
Yeah, I
that
don't
old
think
woman
it's
was just kind of
yeah, sure.
interesting there. I don't think the movie ever really acknowledges the fact that Brendan Gleeson's character is likely 20 years older than Colin Farrell's. Like some sort of that. Like the idea that he would maybe a little more concerned about his place in the world and the legacy he leaves
Mhm.
behind, I think is kind of valid. Like I was actually on his side for most of the time, and like he's somebody who's just like, how do you break up with somebody? Do you do it slowly? Do you kind of break it to them? Logically, or do you just pull the band-aid off? And he chose to just pull the band-aid off, and you know,
Yeah,
hilarity ensues. Yeah.
I thought about it, Devindra, but I think that part of the reason he has to pull the Band-Aid off is because they live on Inisherin, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think if
Yeah.
if they lived in a city, it's like, oh yeah, we'll hang out next week, like, and then you
Yeah,
never
it's
see
true.
them.
It's true.
You never see
But
them again. But,
also,
but because
I
they're on this small island,
mhm.
it's like you have to just make your intentions clear, or
Yeah.
else,
And the
you know.
movie is not like shy about saying like Colin Farrell's character is kind of what they're saying. Like he is a sweet guy. He is not very well read though. Like he just kind of exists in his own bubble and his own thing. So I think even I think the the mental anguish of Brendan Gleeson's character, like explaining why, like it's easier just to do this rather than to sit you down and have a breakup talk or something, which he eventually has to do. But yeah.
I,
I found
Go ahead,
the
Jeff.
moment where the finger actually is cut off to
Yeah.
be extremely shocking. And the movie is like this ha ha fun times, and then all of a sudden it just ratchets up the stakes, and I've never seen a movie do that before, where it just gets into a completely different gear.
Mhm.
You establish this very light, this very fun, kind of silly tone, and then this one act
Mhm.
completely transforms the context. It's really
Yeah.
shocking.
I
And
think
I loved it. I loved it
Mhm.
because at that point you're
Mhm.
like, okay, anything can happen now. And we're really talking about something real. And Brendan Gleeson's character has some serious issues.
Serious issues.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
There's a lot going on there. Perhaps if you want to be a fiddler or, for the rest of your life, you don't want to start chopping off your fiddle fingers. Like I think there is an inherent, like huge,
Yeah.
it's not logical. Like
Yeah.
what he's doing, it's like purely emotional. And both these men are like running on their emotions.
yeah.
I would say though, the moment when the policeman punches Colin Farrell kind of out of nowhere, that is also like there are escalation points in this movie. And I feel like that was one because then Brendan Gleeson's character says that, and wordlessly is just like, okay, buddy, like let me just at least like start getting you home. Like
Amazing
that whole
moment.
moment,
Amazing
crazy
moment.
moment, an amazing moment, and it shows like there is love between them. It's like I just don't want to talk with you anymore because talking with you sucks the soul out of my life because I want to do other things, and that is understandable to a certain degree. Yeah.
It does kind of belie his desire to leave a legacy, though, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if he was really committed to leaving a legacy, he wouldn't be cutting off his finger. I mean, I don't know. The movie explains it almost. It's almost like self-parody because he's like
Yes. Yes.
conducting the
Yes.
people, and there's like there's
Well,
literally
He's just
blood.
shoving the
There's
fiddle in
literally
the air. Yeah.
blood spraying everywhere
it's a
when he's like
wonderful
conducting people at the pub. Yeah.
there's a wonderful line when he cuts off all 5 of his fingers. He says I can't remember what prompts it, but he says, don't worry about it. It's a relief.
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
like, wow. I mean, there's so much in that of well, now the pressure isn't on me to actually play this song. Now that
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's a relief that I don't have fingers, and now I'm not responsible for what those fingers are capable of doing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a very I found this to be a very, very powerful, moving movie.
Mhm.
And
I thought. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
go
Jeff.
ahead, no,
Go ahead.
please.
Well, I thought that you brought up the point earlier about legacy, Jeff, and it's definitely something I am thinking heavily about. Right. And I'll just get a little personal, and say that like, I'm really extremely proud of what we've built here on the Filmcast. And also like I've taken a massive amount of time and effort to try to build something similar over at the decodingtv.com, Um and I'm very proud of like what I've been able to accomplish there. At the same time, you know, I'm also looking at like, is what I want to be known for at the end of life
Hmm.
that I talked about a bunch of movies and TV. Like, is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is that it? It's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people get a lot out of what we do, and they get community out of what we do. People have met and gotten married and become friends and visited each other and so on, and because of the communities that we've helped to build. Um, so it's not like there's nothing there that's valuable, but it's
It's a
just like,
very human thought.
right. It's
I
just like,
think,
yeah,
yeah.
what am I going to be known
Hmm.
for? What do I want to be known for? Um, but I think what the movie is trying to say is that dedication to that legacy can become too extreme and counterproductive, right? Like,
Hmm.
to put it lightly. He's
We're more than what we leave behind in a way. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's the
And
relationships we leave behind too.
Yes.
Yeah.
hundred
I think
percent,
that's what he's saying is the
yeah,
Mhm.
relationships are as important.
hundred
Yeah.
percent,
Yeah.
100%.
That I
Yeah.
love the drunken shouting match between Colin Farrell's character and Gleason's when he's just like, yeah, I don't know if people will remember me, but I'll remember my sister. And
Yeah.
she is just in the back, just like he's saying very sweet things about her because that's what he truly feels. He doesn't have actual ill will to her, even though they're stuck in this house, living like in twin beds, sleeping next to each other like a married couple, and not a great setup, for adults to be living in. But it's very sweet, and he's sweet to her, and that's how she responds. And I
Yeah.
do, yeah. Every scene of this movie, even though this movie just tends to go on for a while, I feel like every scene is so powerful, even though if it's just people walking down a road with some cows or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are like flashes of really goofy, zany humor, like
Mhm.
when he tells Brendan Gleeson's friend that his mom or dad got hit by a bread truck or
Dude, that
something.
line.
Oh man,
That line
that's
where he's
how
like,
my mom
if it's the
died.
same bread truck, I'm gonna kill him. So great.
It's just like, you're at that point in the movie, you're like, this is in a really dark place, and then all of a sudden, just like something that's like coming out of like an SNL sketch, like hits you.
Yeah.
It's very funny. Yeah. So
It happens. It happens to people all the time. I know. My mom was it's so great.
Any thoughts on the ending? So, like, what happens at
Mhm.
the end is Brendan Gleeson throws some fingers. They tragically get eaten by Colin
Sweet donkey.
Farrell's donkey
Yeah,
pony
it's
creature,
miniature donkey. Yeah.
and he dies. And so Colin Farrell's like, "Well, whatever our quarrels were, now I'm super pissed. I'm gonna burn down
Yeah.
your house
This
with
time
you."
it's personal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This time,
Well,
yeah.
he's literally everything's been systematically taken away from Colin Farrell. Everything
Yeah.
he has, and it's not a lot of things. He doesn't start
Yeah.
with a lot,
Yeah.
but everything
Yeah.
his sister has left. His only
Yeah.
friendship is gone. He has no purpose, and at least he can sit in his room with his little donkey who goes in the room and
Mhm.
gives him a little bit
Yeah.
of love. And now that's
Sweet,
gone.
sweet donkey.
It
And
is
also, like, yeah, there are certainly parallels between, I think, how they're framing his intelligence or his like his world weariness, I guess. I don't know, like they call him dull. And what is a duller animal than a donkey? An animal we literally call an ass. And there was a sweetness to that, like a sweetness in how the donkey is just very cute. Like it'll just like knock at the door in the morning and go in and hang out with them. I found that super relatable. So when their character dies, it's like a version of himself in a certain way too. Like you can understand his response, as drastic as it is. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember hearing at one point, I wish I could remember who to credit. It
Uh-oh.
feels like a Mammoth thing, or somebody said
Oh.
once, one of the things to do in screenwriting is take a man and take everything away from him. And then once he has nothing, take away something else. And it's like, that's what it feels like this movie does to the Colin Farrell character, is literally just systematically dismantle everything that he cares about at all, and destroy him, and then see what happens. And what happens is he becomes this thing that he's never been before. He turns into a monster. And that scene where he systematically puts the wood in the windows and
Yeah.
sets the house on fire is so disturbing, because the whole time you just go, stop, you're a good man, you're nice. And man, I loved the framing of that, because again, it's in a one sense, it's such low stakes of be a nice person. And on the other hand, it's everything. It's everything. It's just be nice to each other. And it is people have value, assign value to that in the context of this movie. Like, Colin, you're nice, you're a nice guy. We like that about you. And because he goes down this road of losing that, it's so tragic. It's like, it's not Lear, it's not Macbeth. It's just this guy becoming not a nice person anymore.
Yeah. Beautifully said, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that. Great interpretation of kind of the tragedy of the ending. Devindra Hardware, any other thoughts on the end of this movie before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I mean, I also thought it was beautiful. Like, this is one of those movies that ends at the exact right spot. And I always love being able to call that, because like, I do feel like I could tell when a movie is good and when it's perfect is when like me and the director are kind of vibing on the same level. So like, to end it right after the beach and to be like, well, this is just kind of it. This is what we are now. This is going to be it till the end. It does make you think about like how far you came with this film, like from the beginning, from Colin Farrell walking down a rainbow behind him and being so happy and gleeful, to where we are now. Like, it's sad and depressing, but also like it feels like we see this story time and time again, be it war, be it like quarrels between friends or anything. Like, it is so human. This island is like a microcosm for our civilization in a way. And it left me sad, but also like, well, that's just how we are. I don't know how we fix that in ourselves, but I did appreciate where it ended.
That microcosm you're talking about is so poignant, because, I think, what is it, only in the last few years, the OED has added the word unfriending to the dictionary. Right. We now unfriend. And it's literally the premise of this movie is someone gets unfriended.
Mm-hmm. Also, I just want to say this is a much better movie than the movie Unfriended, the 2014 horror film. So
I heard some people like some of those, but
yeah. I didn't say it was bad.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's much better than that one. So anyway, at the end of the day, it's pretty impressive that Martin McDonagh made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.